So hi, everybody. Again, I'm Mary Bushman, um, retired after 5 years of working with Lindsay and Kate and all y'all who've been around for a long time with all the different partner organizations, putting together a strategic plan for ECOP. And I still have a lot of passion for all that work. But as a private citizen, I've kind of decided to apply it a little bit differently. Um, Sort of inspired by ECOP. There's was a group of folks in the Mosier area that are really wanted to learn more about how to manage their oak trees, primarily for wildlife. Most of them got the NRCS grant to do fuel reduction, and in their forests and around their properties, their primary homes. But they really wanted to learn more and wanted to share their knowledge with each other. So the group that lives in Mosier calls themselves the Mosier White Oaks group. We're basically more social than anything. We don't have a lot of structure, other than we get together quarterly and have a potluck and talk about what's going on, much like ECOP, but obviously on a smaller scale for each of us private landowners. So it's just, it's just private landowners who have a few acres and up. But they first got together just to talk about what to do with the grants that were coming through to do fuel reduction and how to kind of balance those grants with wildlife objectives rather than just purely fuel objectives. And there's no one answer to that, of course, but in order to start learning more about that, we talk about wildlife and plants and so on. And the group also, being part of Mosier, Mosier has a Spring Fest every year in around Earth Day, whatever Saturday that happens to fall on in April. And so our group, the first year, set up a booth to just say, hey, here we are, and we like to think about oak trees and oak habitats and wildlife and stuff. The second year, we decided to kind of formalize that a little bit more around the questions about what kinds of wildlife and plants and fungi we're talking about in the Mosier oak habitats. So we put together this idea of having a Bioblitz and hosting it through using iNaturalist. And if I'm probably not going to go deep into iNaturalist because most people have at least dabbled in it, but towards the end, if you still have questions, let me know. But in addition to, so we at the spring of 2024 in April, we invited people to join the Bioblitz and at the Earth Day event. And we also hosted several workshops led by biologists who specialized in plants, birds, reptiles, and so on. And so using iNaturalist, we created that catalog. The Mosier Bioblitz, a Bioblitz, if you haven't ever participated in one, they're great fun. If anyone ever comes your way, go ahead and get on board. A Bioblitz is a collective community-based science effort to record as many species as possible within a designated area and time period. A lot of them are done like in a day or a weekend. We actually chose for Mosier to leave it open for an entire year. Pretty much an entire year. And because we wanted to learn not just about the wildlife at one point in time, but throughout the cycles of in seasons of the year. So we used iNaturalist to collect data points. And I think my next slide kind of shows that we used iNaturalist to collect those data points, and this is kind of what it looks like. So in iNaturalist, I was able to set up a project, and I drew a polygon roughly just by looking at aerial photos, aerial maps, that is roughly around the oak habitats that are in the Mosier watershed. I don't know if my cursor shows up on here or not, but we did not include Hood River. We stuck with, this is sort of the, if you're looking at the west side of our boundary, it kind of goes to the crest of the mountains before they drop down into the Hood River Valley. And then we went all the way south to where the conifer forest becomes more dominant. And to the east, we just went as far as Rowena because Rowena is part of the official Mosier watershed, which is kind of supported by the Soil and Water Conservation District. So if you're interested in more, and I'm going to go into the results of our Bioblitz, but it still exists on iNaturalist. And if you go search in iNaturalist for the Mosier White Oaks biological catalog, it'll pop up and you could poke around and look at that. The cool thing about iNaturalist is that other folks around the world or locally look at the data that gets collected and kind of verify whether they think that the identification, the naming of that particular species is accurate or not. And there's a lot of data around each one of those things in terms of location, time of day, time, place, and so on. So it's pretty data rich for hopefully future grad students who like to mine data. But for our purposes, we just wanted to figure out like who are all these critters that we live with in the Mosier area. And we came up with about 780 species. You can see their powerful database is able to break it down into all these different types of critters. And so I'm going to show you some of our results. So in the roughly 1 year that we had our project open, people through iNaturalist loaded up their observations for 785 species of birds, plants, insects, amphibians, reptiles, and fungi. These are the 15 most often observed species. I always think it's really fascinating that Lamatium columbianum is the most observed one. I guess my theory is it's so flashy, so early in the year. It's a beautiful, beautiful plant. And also just that we learned that that's actually pretty amazing biodiversity for such a small area around Mosier. We had 470 people contribute observations to our project. Now, with iNaturalist, I was able to capture observations that were uploaded from anybody who was within that polygon that I showed you, the watershed that I drew. So it wasn't just us that are part of the Mosier White Oaks group. It was anybody who came out to the Mosier area to look at wildflowers or look at birds or look at butterflies that uploaded their data. So, and this happens to be a list of the folks who provided the most observations. Our number one, I have to tell the story of our number one contributor. I never met him, but he lived in Mosier, at least for that year. I don't know if he's still there. I don't know his actual name. I just know his moniker from iNaturalist, but he moved to Mosier from Hong Kong, and he had written a book about the butterflies of Hong Kong. So he's very knowledgeable about, and he's a I don't know if he's a professor, he's a researcher. Anyway, he knows his entomology, and he contributed 262, mostly insect species. So he really contributed a lot, I think, a lot of diversity to our project. And then if any of you who know Humble Roots know Drew, and he was number 2. But it also, the thing that's really interesting about the observers is a lot of these people are folks that come out to see all the cool plants and stuff, maybe from Portland or Vancouver, wherever, people who live in more urban areas that like to come out and see all of our beautiful landscape. So, yeah, so 407 individuals collected 4,570 observations. That's pretty considerable. Yeah, again, it's a testament to how popular our area is to both professional and casual naturalists. And so the really good, another really wonderful part of all of this is that 70% of those observations were confirmed at research grade, which just means, if you don't know iNaturalists, 2 or 3 people have verified that the pictures that you uploaded for your species indeed are likely to be the species. I led a workshop, a small workshop with a herpetologist. Well, he's actually a friend who just really likes really likes amphibians and reptiles, and he came out and led a workshop with some kids and a really nice family and a few other of us. And these were we only had 8 species of reptiles uploaded. I think people are less likely to capture those, but these, I've seen all of them. The rattlesnake is not on here. We know it hasn't captured anywhere near all of the critters. Birds were, obviously very, very popular. 150 birds are a little bit hard to do on iNaturalist because most people use their phones and just the iNaturalist app on their phone, and obviously birds are a little bit hard to capture with your iPhone. So I think eBird would probably give us a better picture, but we just stuck to the one format. So we found, not surprisingly, Western bluebird was the most reported. They're so pretty. Mammals also a little bit hard to capture with your iPhone, but we had 20 different species, which is probably pretty good representation of who we had. There even are quite a few bats included. I'm not really sure how those get photographed and verified, but there they are. We must have had somebody that was into bats that did it, because it's pretty hard to capture a bat with your iPhone. Yeah, and insects, as I mentioned before, the one fellow who came to live in Mosier, at least for that year, really contributed a lot to butterflies and moths and other insects as well. But 103 different people actually also contributed to observations for insects. Fungi and lichens, I had intended to lead some workshops in the fall, but I just didn't get around to it. So I'd love to focus more on fungi and lichens in oak habitats and get more observations in iNaturalist, because I think it's probably considerably diverse in our area. This year would have been a great year to do it because it was nice and wet. Plants, not surprising, 3,405 observations of 371 species. Again, the Lomatium columbianum was the most popular. I'm not surprised that grass widows were second. And yeah, oak was number 4. But sometimes people who take pictures of flowers forget to look up. I'm guilty of that. And then, yeah, this is just another slide showing you that we hosted this through iNaturalist. It was a great tool. I think our group is very happy to have learned all that we did. There we go. That's the last slide. I'd love to take any questions if anybody has any.
Mary, were those slides you shared kind of what iNaturalist gives you when you do a Bioblitz? You can kind of summarize it like that.
Yeah. And you actually don't have to call it a Bioblitz. It can be any kind of project. We called it a Bioblitz because those are sort of, they're just, it's a community event kind of a thing. But if you as a large landowner, say one of the parks, one of the Oregon State Parks within an oak habitat could draw a polygon around that park and see what people are uploading casually, and you would learn a lot. So it's not hard to query the iNaturalist data. And yes, those are ones that they built these. So so I did screenshots of what iNaturalist was providing for me, but I could sort for fungi and lichens, I could sort for insects, I could sort for mammals. So there's probably other ways to do it as well, but I just, yeah.
Have you looked if any of the observations were rare?
I was trying, a couple times I've given this presentation, people have asked me that. I don't know how to, I'm not familiar enough with iNaturalist to figure out how to find which ones. I couldn't figure out how to sort for it. I guess if I knew the names of something I was looking for, I could sort for that. But I need to learn a little bit more. And I think the answer is yes, you can. I just haven't figured out how to do it.
Yeah.
And I also know that rare plant data is, I don't know what word they use. They don't share the locations of them, specific locations. So I'm not sure how obscured the location is. It might be, it might say by the county that it was there. So I'm not sure if it would, I'm not sure exactly how to capture it. I thought that I uploaded the name of the little teeny tiny poppy. Starts with M. Anyway, I think I put that on there and I couldn't find it last night. So, and if for anybody who uses iNaturalist, if you have a rare plant, or if you have, lion's mane fungus growing on an awesome oak tree and you don't want people to come and harvest it for their dinner, you can obscure the locations of the data pretty easily. And there are times when I do, because it's right next to my house or something. Sometimes I just feel a little private. That doesn't mean it doesn't show up in this thing. It just doesn't show up the precise location. It just says, within, can't remember, within a mile or something. It depends on actually you can even draw how big the area is that thing was found at. So you can obscure it a lot or a little.
Sarah, did you have some?
Oh, I was just gonna say, I think, Mary, you can export as an Excel spreadsheet, and I think it would probably be more easily sortable that way.
Yeah.
And then to identify like the rare species and stuff like that. I did have a question about, did you see any interesting bees?
I unfortunately don't know the difference between one that's interesting and one that's not, but I think they're all interesting. So, Sarah, if you want to find interesting bees and want to fiddle around with our data, I'd be happy to learn from you about that.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna go check out the link, but thanks.
Mary, when you're setting these projects up, do people have to, when they're making observations in iNaturalist, do they have to give you permission to view their records, or do they just come up because they're in the geography of the project?
They came up because they were in the geography of the project. So when you use iNaturalist, unless you obscure the data, I don't even know how you could obscure it that much. Well, actually, I think there is a button you can push that says private.
Okay.
Most people do not select that, and that is not the default. So most data is just, I captured data from, Betsy Smith that came out from Portland and who had no idea that I was doing this project. So
I see. And you have to have a photo to create a record in iNaturalist?
No, let me think. Mike McCaig might know the answer to that. He's my photography for iNaturalist specialist.
I think you need a photo or a video.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've posted iNaturalist without
But
one or more photographs.
you could do like a wildlife track, like someone might not have seen a
Yes.
mountain lion, they might have just done the track. You don't need like a picture of the actual animal,
Just-
so.
One thing, I don't know how much is done, but I've added the recording.
Yeah,
There was
that's probably the
insect that I
bat,
had
that's
no
what I was thinking for the
idea
bat, it was
what
probably
it
just
was.
the.
People from the citizen science point of
Yeah.
view, like, I think it's this, I think it's that, and so it started that dialogue of trying to assess what it was.
Mhm.
I think they also recently added an option to add video or audio recordings, like you can do with Marlin.
Yeah, that would make sense. It's like birds, they're not like that.
Yeah. And people do scat as well. There's actually a whole group in iNaturalists who specialize in scat. So it's good to take a picture of something and then start the conversation.
And can you query a geography just any old time? You don't have to create a project to capture that information?
I'm pretty sure you could just draw, I mean, basically that's what I did. And I was using Google Earth to draw a polygon. So I don't have all the fancy tools I used to have when I worked for all the cool organizations I worked for. So I just drew a polygon. I can't even remember all the letters that go with how you draw a polygon in Google Earth, but yeah, and then I just laid it over so I'm like the administrator of this along with Drew from Humble Roots. So we kind of co-manage it. Nobody else can go in and fiddle with our particular project, but you could create another one for another place. And you can leave it open for one day or a year. Actually, somehow, when I went and looked at this last night, I don't know if I opened it on accident or Drew opened it, but now it has collected 2 years worth of data. Well, a year and a half. And so the numbers were suddenly much larger. So there's even more species out there now that it's been open longer. So that's kind of cool too. It'd be fun to just look at the data again. And so you can leave it open. Yeah.
Grab everything in the oak landscape and see how many species have been observed,
Yeah.
I'm sure it's incredible.
It is. It's a fun tool. And as Sarah, I think it's Sarah that said, you can export the data into Excel or into a spreadsheet and probably do a lot more analysis on it than I did. I did this all as a volunteer, and I tell you, it took a lot of my time. So I haven't. I've just done the analysis, the results light, LITE, just not too deep, but just I think it's been very exciting for the folks in Mosier. We presented the results of this data at the Mosier Spring Fest and Summer Fest this year, and people just love, to learn about these things. So
That's really cool. Thank you for sharing, Mary.
you're welcome. And also, I have to give a shout. I'm not the coordinator or the organizer or the instigator for the Mosier White Oaks group, but as a very casual, collective of people who just want to learn, it has been a pretty good experience, I think, for everybody. Some of them have now gotten involved in Firewise and so on. So, they've met each other and they're working together, and they've really, I think, created a lot of layers to how well they are able to apply information to making decisions for how they're going to take care of their oak habitats. So anybody who's living in a small communities, Washington or anywhere, it's kind of great to reach out to your neighbors and share the knowledge.
Yeah, thank you.
Uh-huh.